Hi, fellow Benzo warriors and Benzo buddy friends. I hope everybody's off to a great start this new year. Before I start in on my intended topic for today, for those of you who have not received news about Dr. Armstrong's passing, I wanted to do a quick kind of memorial video for him since he was such a huge part of my taper recovery and a very good friend of mine, as you all know. For those of you who didn't know, I'm still a little fuzzy on the cause of death, but I understand it was a heart attack and then subsequent kidney failure. This is what happens when you take away a man's purpose, and when the Texas Pharmacy Board took away his ability to prescribe for taper patients, I pretty much knew this was coming. I pretty much knew, and several other people did too. I was really still hit by the news once I got it, but it was January 10th, so it's been a couple weeks now, and I wanted some time to pass to just do a little reflecting on my own. A few words about Dr. Armstrong. For those of you who didn't know him, he's a very kind man. He had been through benzo and alcohol withdrawal himself, so he had a pretty good pulse of what it took to get off these drugs, which is why he was doing what he was doing. And I know there's some people who have opinions, but this is not about opinions tonight. This is about honoring a man who has helped a lot of people, myself included. One of the kindest men, generous men. During my withdrawal, he was prescribing a very large dose of Valium for me to get off of that no other doctor would have jeopardized their license to do. There were many, many nights I called him when I had no one else. I was alone. None of my friends understood. My family members were totally clueless, more so than my friends. And he talked me off of a number of cliffs, really bad ones. Anxiety, as you all know, from hell, and absolute, complete disbelief that I was going through anything like this that I never would have been able to imagine. And sometimes he would spend close to 2 hours on the phone with me at one time when I know he was busy and he had a lot of other patients to take care of. I met Dr. Armstrong, I think, about 5 years ago, at the beginning of this journey, 6 years ago maybe, because it was right toward the beginning when I was very, very sick and I couldn't work anymore because I'd been trying to take myself off the drug. I couldn't do it. I had some other complications because of hormones that made it even more difficult. And I had gone to doctor after doctor, like many of you have experienced this, with not a single clue that most of my problems were contributed to the withdrawal. I wanted to speak to a little bit about the fear associated with rumors that get started online, and possibly some of them being seeded from people who either don't know about certain subject matter or who possibly are planting information online to intentionally distract the community and sort of pit people against each other, because I see it happening in other areas of our culture and our society right now with the whole just the whole greed and so much stuff going on in our world. An example of this was the progesterone, and I wanted to use myself as an example because, as you know, many of you know that I was put on the progesterone to help me get off the benzos. I'd already been on a fairly low dose of it and did okay with it, which I realize there's some people that won't. And what they're not understanding is the reaction that they're having is just like they would take another supplement. It's not the progesterone, it's just that their systems are reacting to everything because of these drugs. And I know, because I didn't understand myself, why sometimes I would react to things and sometimes I wouldn't, and still do, after just celebrating my 2-year anniversary just like 4 days ago. Yeehaw! So, and doing pretty good, doing really good actually on a lot of days, and still struggling with a few symptoms, but I'm going to go into that after my little memorial here because I want to stay focused. The progesterone, I think, is something that the root of it really came from when the FDA tried to close down a lot of compounding pharmacies back in the early part of 2002, 3 in there someplace. And they had led a lot of people to believe in the media and otherwise that across the board all hormones were dangerous. And I mean, they are in the wrong hands and if used incorrectly, which I've gone through myself. So I'm not advocating for or against. I'm saying keep an open mind with all of your healthcare stuff and don't listen to rumors all the time, because you don't actually know until you get somebody that knows, really knows. I mean, and that's hard to sift through in the menagerie online of information that we get, I realize, but you have to kind of be your own best advocate with all of this stuff, which is why I do these videos. As you know, I've been through a lot of it myself, and having to sift through sometimes when your brain is completely train wrecked from coming off this drug, to know what's causing what and why you feel the way you do when none of the doctors seem to understand or have a clue what's going on. And that's the hardest part, is that we're just in such uncharted territory. But Dr. Armstrong was willing to take that chance with prescribing these drugs to help people get off, because he knew how horrible it was to recover from this drug himself. He virtually lost everything in his mid-60s and had to rebuild after coming off drugs and alcohol, the benzos particularly, and alcohol. So I wanted to just take a moment to reflect, and for those of you who've worked with him know that probably his cognitive function was starting to decline some the last couple years, and there were those of us that did notice, and that's all I'm going to say on that subject, because I want to back up about the progesterone. So the pharmaceutical companies did their best because they wanted the bioidenticals off the market. It was competing with their profit margin after the Women's Health Initiative came out, and was seriously, these were all done on synthetic hormones only and failed miserably. They had to cut the study short. So they tried to blanket all hormones into what they found with the studies, and they scared a lot of women out of taking their hormones. But I personally, as I've told you before, have seen no downside to high-dose progesterone other than it really helping calm my nervous system down. I don't need as much of it as I did early on, even a year ago. I'm down to still a fairly high dose, but I've seen no evidence in my blood tests or otherwise that this has been a problem for me on any level. So for those of you who are frightened, I understand, because we get frightened of taking almost everything. We're frightened of our own shadow coming off these drugs, and we don't need any more fear spread about other things that maybe might have the potential to help someone like it did me. I never would have gotten off these drugs without Roy, Dr. Armstrong, or the progesterone. So I want to speak out on that point. He helped me with money, pay my rent, because I wasn't getting enough on disability to pay my bills. A lot of friends helped me, and I'm really enormously grateful, because I wouldn't be sitting here today if it weren't for many, many people. So But Dr. Armstrong is one big one. He got me off the drugs successfully and became a friend, and not only helped me get through withdrawal, but also helped me understand the parts of myself that I was going to uncover without the drug that were going to be hard to deal with when I couldn't medicate them away, which is partially why many of us end up on these drugs, because we're running from something else probably a lot bigger than we were even aware of that was impacting us from childhood or who knows where. We just get a lot of shit dumped on us, you know, when we're kids, and in our society in general, is negativity and just things that we're all impacted different, but most of us who withdraw from these drugs and have problems are really sensitive, so we're more prone toward dealing with these sorts of issues to begin with. So anyway, I'm not going to spend too much time on that. I had a couple of other things I want to go to, but I wanted to honor his memory for those of you who know him, and for those of you who don't know him, because we have one more warrior who was out there helping many of us that's not there anymore. And there's just a few of us left standing that haven't been scared out of this. So bear in mind that the powers that be are invested in keeping this whole thing to themselves. There's a lot of money in all this, and they don't want people educated too much because they're more easily manipulated when they don't have the information. So be your best advocate, do your own research, and don't let people sway you too much. Yes, the Benzo support groups are good to get basic information, but I did not live on every single statement. I realized that it's an individual process. So anyway, I was really sad by the news, and I just want to say how grateful I was to Dr. Armstrong for all of the support he was to me, and I will probably never forget him because it was a very crucial part of my life. So, on to a lighter subject here. I wanted to cover this. Okay, so this is a little tricky here for me because I feel really bad about this, and I kind of have to go public and redeem myself. But I had a spell over the last month or two. As you know, I got hit with having a lot of stuff happen, and I was juggling a lot for my nervous system to handle. And my nonprofit line, which is on the website, I've been getting a lot of marketing calls on there as of probably the last, 6 months. It's gotten worse, and I on a do not call list, but I understand those things are BS. I don't know that they're really valuable or not, but anyway, I got sort of harried a couple days in a row, and I'd been getting calls from the same number over and over and over again, and I finally just got fed up, and I picked up the phone without answering it and said, if you don't stop calling me, I'm going to turn you over to the FCC. It turns out it was a Benzo patient. I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh, because it probably, they were reaching out to get help, and they were probably in desperate situation, and I hung up on them and threatened them with the FCC. Because about 3 weeks ago, I got a postcard from Cleveland, Ohio. So if the person who mailed this is listening, I am willing to redeem myself with a free consultation. If you need help, you can still call. I promise I won't turn you over to the FCC or hang up on you. I have gotten control of my anxiety over the marketing calls. But it just said that basically they had called, and I hung up on them, threatening to turn them over to the FCC, and they said that they wouldn't bother me any further. And I got the card, and I thought they must have felt really bad to go to all this trouble and write me a postcard. So for those of you who don't even know what to say. I'm embarrassed. I mean, I'm totally embarrassed by this. But anyway, I apologize if that was you. Please don't not get help, even if it's not from me. Try to reach out. That was a really rough few days for me when I was doing that. And I mean, it was just a ridiculous amount of phone marketing calls, and I did not see the caller IDs. So I apologize, and please, if you're seeing this, contact me if you still need help. All right. So now, I know you guys who've seen my last couple videos that I've talked a lot about this diet. I've been watching a lot of Dr. Daniel Amen's work, and very impressed with his work in the world. He's gone into the school systems trying to get sugar out of kids' diet, helping people lose weight. Has a huge history. He's a 10-time New York bestseller. Very impressive information about brain trauma. He works with a lot of brain trauma patients, and as you all know, I've had a number of blackouts that resulted in head trauma, and I didn't realize probably till I listened to a lot of his videos how complicated my withdrawal was as a result of those repeated blows to the head and concussions that I sustained with the injuries. So his work is based on research through SPECT scans that he's done of people with different brain types. And I found that I was able to trace back a lot of my behavior stuff to specific incidences that happened to me when I was a kid after I had had a couple what would have been considered to be minor head injuries. I was playing touch football in the backyard and ran into a tree and cold-cocked myself, the first one. And because you get up and you shake it off and you appear fine, does not mean that these injuries are not a problem later on, because they're cumulative into adulthood from the way I understand. The second injury I had, my brothers liked to toss Folgers 5-pound coffee cans over a bar in our garage, and I just happened to have amazing timing that I walked out of the kitchen into the garage at the time they threw the can over and hit me square in the head, resulting in stitches to the head. Again, not unconscious, nothing major, but they're cumulative. And no one has really brought this to my attention, because I think it really complicates your withdrawal the more head trauma you have. And then, of course, y'all know that I ended up on disability because of early on in my health issues from infections and whatnot. I had gotten severely dehydrated and blacked out and fractured my left orbit, falling face first into the floor after becoming unconscious. So these, and then 3 more blackouts toward the end of my withdrawal, and those were just in the last 3 years. So I got really fascinated with his work and decided that I felt the diet would be really beneficial to me, which I started about 2 months ago, and I have had a complete reversal of all the electrical shocks, as I think I mentioned in one video. I have had probably a reduction of several other symptoms. I'm sleeping 6 to 7 hours most nights. I still have a few nights here and there that aren't so good, but feeling mostly a lot more good days than bad days anymore, and I'm able to work again, although, you know, on a pretty micromanaged schedule, which is fine. I mean, I'm feeling really productive, and that feels good. I still have issues if I try to bite off more than I can chew with overstimulation, although I have found that if I catch myself soon enough and step back and do some breathing or yoga or meditation before I get to the point of no return, that I can usually calm that response down fairly quick now, instead of it going on for hours because I just did too much. So I decided that I was going to employ this particular program into a consultation that I'm successfully starting to do with several of my own clients that have contacted me, and see what kind of results we get with people who are actually in going through tapering off the medications. So it's very, very few supplements, but based on this diet, which I think I've mentioned is absolutely no sugar or grains. You can use stevia. It's fairly high, well, it is very high in omega-3, and that's one of the first supplements I will add in out of these few that I'm using, is a high quality, high dose omega-3 oil. And I like this one because it's very clean. It's made in Alaska, wild-caught fish, and it has 1,200 milligrams per capsule, which is a pretty high dose considering that it's got a good EPA to DHA ratio, which means you need higher EPA than DHA. So Dr. Amen's recommendation for recovery is about 5,000 milligrams, sorry. And so I put myself on, which I had not been taking a very high dose of fish oil before, and I put myself on that along with these other few things that he did recommend, because I was having really brutal things, as you know, with this last wave that I had from August until about the time I went on the diet in December, and I had a huge turnaround of things, and I'm really optimistic that I'm making a full recovery this year. So the other thing that I have mentioned in my other videos is because we tend to have higher protein needs, and they don't advocate for a higher protein diet, but I think we have higher protein needs due to the fact that our bodies are under such rapid repair. And since this is a food grade, I know I've talked about Dr. Axe and his collagen, mainly because it's not made from grains. It's a fish collagen bone-based protein, and it has about 7 grams of protein per scoop. I put in about 3 scoops in a protein shake so that I can get roughly about 2,500, 25 grams of protein. 2,500. It's getting late. I've had a long day. What can I say? I was trying to squeeze this in before it got much later, and I was too tired. So, and since it is a more of a food grade than a lot of the grains, you won't have the sugar reaction. Should be pretty calming. When I have my smoothie during the day and my coconut cream added into it with the protein and a few berries and other yummy things that I put in there, I tend to feel a lot more relaxed and grounded with this. So I'd highly recommend starting with those 2 things. Now, if you need some hand holding, like a lot of people do with diet, I am available for consultations at $60 an hour. I realize a lot of you are financially impacted by withdrawal because you can't work, so I work with people on a sliding scale and just ask that you donate something for the nonprofit, for the Follow Your Bliss Foundation, since that's what we're set up for. The other parts of the diet are high omega-3s, a lot of seeds, chia seeds, flaxseed, hemp seed, pumpkin seed. I eat those in my diet every day without fail. I try to get a little less of the omega-6 because you need a higher 3-to-6 ratio. So the nuts, although walnuts are pretty high in omega-3, the other nuts are higher in omega-6. So I do eat nuts and nut butter, but I try to eat it in ratio to the omega-3s that I'm getting. So a little more omega-3 to omega-6, because omega-6 causes inflammation, and we've got big time inflammation with coming off these drugs, as you know. Swollen joints, benzo belly, swollen muscles, sore, all that, which is kind of one of the last things that I have that I've been playing around with some things to try to get rid of. But before I go into that, I wanted to mention this other one product that I've been having really good luck with. My brain, besides the tea. The tea helped with the electrical shocks a lot, the Milky Oat tea. It's a bulk tea. I think I've left links to it before. I drink that at least once a day if I'm having a bad day, twice a day. very, and bear in mind that all these things I'm telling you are not going to have like a benzo effect where immediately you're going to feel calmer and chilled. They're all things that take time to build and get better. Although the diet change was huge, within several days I noticed a big difference. But it took a couple months to relieve other symptoms that I no longer have, such as the blurred vision was just miserable. Last fall, I could barely look at my computer screen for more than maybe an hour. I was trying to do an ASU course thing for this person I'm helping, and I literally would not be able to work beyond about 4 o'clock in the afternoon before my vision would just go. And I had done some of the research that Dr. Amen had on his site about saffron and a product called MacuGuard. So for those of you who are recovering and are not in withdrawal, I'd recommend this for the blurred vision. It's called MacuGuard. It has a number of anti-inflammatory properties in it along with the saffron. The saffron is good for serotonin release. And for those of us going through this, as you all know, we all need something to kind of calm us down. And I found that rather quickly, I would say that it took about a month for the blurred vision to completely, well, I'd say it didn't completely clear up. If I get overtired, it will still get a little off now, but I mean, it's one fragment, small fragment of what it was 2 months ago. I can work well into the night now, unless I'm just having an off day or tired. I can work pretty late without my vision going on me. So I was really excited about this product. It's made by Life Extension, and it's really good. So kind of pricey, but I think it's worth it. I can see again, and that's like everything, especially when I need to work, and even with my glasses I couldn't see, so my reading glasses. So the other couple of things that besides the tea that I wanted to bring up was I'm playing around because this muscle tightness is really goofy. I'll have a couple days where it's not so bad, and then I'll have a day where it's just like unbearable. It's so painful, and it's just a weird sort of tightness. It's not, and then those of you who are going through it understand it, because I went to a couple massage therapists that were working on me, and they're like, God, this is just a weird type of tightness. They've worked on my benzo belly, and it's like rope still in certain areas. Just and that having the stomach massage has definitely helped a lot. I think the diet's helping a lot because it's bringing down the inflammation slowly. But there's a couple things I'm experimenting with that I'm so far having some minor good results with. And again, you guys use your own judgment. I'm not trying to force anything because I'm not making any money off these products. I just found a curcumin, which I'm sure you know is from turmeric, product that has a pretty high 500 milligrams of curcumin, because one of the things I didn't understand about turmeric, which I found out also from these videos, was that you have to take about 3 to 4 teaspoons of turmeric in your diet a day to get enough of the anti-inflammatory property from the curcumin, which is the active ingredient in turmeric that makes it anti-inflammatory. So personally, I'm only taking this. If you guys want to do the turmeric, it's probably cheaper because this is still not super expensive compared to some, but it's 500 milligrams of curcumin per capsule. And I'm experimenting. I started with 1,000, worked my way up to 2,000. I was getting some results with the 2,000, but that's the recommended, so I thought maybe I'm trying a little bit more to see if that actually will bump it down to a more tolerable level. So I personally don't like the taste of turmeric, which some of you may love. We all have different tastes. I can handle a load of ginger, but not very much turmeric. So I had to get it in a capsule form to try it. So not something that I necessarily recommend you do, but I do recommend the protein and the fish oil. If you do nothing else with the diet, do those two things first, and then see how you do when you come off if you want to add anything else. Now, with researching magnesium for muscle stuff, I found that magnesium glycinate is the one that works best for muscle-related tension and tightness, like what we get, which is, as you know, over the top. It's like crazy tight. It's even bizarre tight. So anyway, I'm sure you guys have seen this product called Calm. It's a combination of, and I take a couple teaspoons of this before bed in some warm water, and this is a berry flavor, so it's really good. It's sweetened with stevia, so there's nothing in it that's going to set off your nervous system. Really, I think it's adding, I'm building on my sleep, and some nights it's deeper. Like last night I got 7 hours, and I'll still wake up because I have to pee a lot, but this one has some GABA, the magnesium glycinate, L-theanine, and the magnesium glycinate, and then it's got one other thing in this, but I can't really remember what it was. Anyway, it's a pretty good product and something that you could probably take in withdrawal that would be calming. And again, none of this stuff is going to have a banging instant effect. You got to give it time. As you know, this whole thing is a long time process. I would say that I'm getting out a lot more. I'm more social, about 90 to 95% recovered at this point, and that's after 2 years. And I know some people that are still dealing with this after years, but I think you can cut off a little bit of time with the diet and a few well thought out supplements. I would say not to go crazy, but I definitely think there's a few things that can be helpful, depending on what your issues are too, because everybody's issues are slightly different. But those are just the few things that I sort of added that I wanted to play around with and see if I could find any noticeable improvements one way or the other. But definitely the diet, for sure. And I suspect it's got a lot to do with all of us having anxiety, have similar brain types to what Dr. Amen's talking about, where we need the brain calmed down with things like serotonin from the saffron and, more meditation, yoga. We tend to get overstimulated way too easy. And as I look back now, when I get those overstimulated moments with getting too much going on, I can see how I was having these issues younger, but they became more pronounced at menopause, because it just does, when your hormones start to decline. So I'm having really good results, and I want to work with people who are interested in working with me one-on-one. And you can contact me either through the comment box here, through our website at followyourblissfoundation.org. You can email me. There's an email address there if you want to set up something. Again, like I said, I'm somewhat flexible. I want to make sure that if you want help, that you can get help. This isn't all about money like a lot of things, but I do have bills to pay, and I have overhead with a website and other things that cost us money to keep running. So on that note, make sure I didn't miss anything. I don't think so. Oh, that was one thing I wanted to talk about with the muscles. The biggest thing that has helped me, swimming. And I realize maybe not all of you have access to a pool, but I would recommend at least brisk walking. Get your muscles moving, because you're going to kick off endorphins, which is going to help. And some of you might not be able to in withdrawal. I could walk and do some light yoga when I was at the last 4 months. It was pretty brutal. There were some days I didn't get out of the house at all, but I find I feel much better with aerobic exercise, which I think is advisable no matter how bad you feel, because you're not going to die from this unless you really try to come off it way too quick, which some people are doing. So I don't recommend that at all. But exercise is really important, and most of the people who've recovered will say the same thing, that they just, and that's what I do a lot of days. I have felt like crap, but I just override what's going on in my brain and just say, you know what, And I do feel better after I go. It gives me a little lift, and it kind of calms me down a little bit because I tend to just get still overstimulated real easy yet. So, anyway, I just had those thoughts for today. I hope you guys are all hanging in there and doing well with your tapers and your recovery. I just want to say stay the course, because it's all you can do. It's a long haul, and I've been there, and I just want to be there to help support you all through it. So take care and stay well. Bye.